We're good to go. I think Rachel was stuck in traffic this morning, so thank you very much, ma'am. Welcome to the Metro Plan Orlando CAC meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Dan Stevens. I'll be chairing the meeting today. This meeting is fully in person, so all committee members are asked to be present in the Orlando Metro Plan Orlando boardroom. Still have virtual participation for the public. I'll ask all committee members to please speak clearly and use your microphones so that those joining us virtually can hear. Now it's time for the Pledge of Allegiance. Today I'll ask Mr. Coleman to lead us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Coleman. There are two public comment points in this meeting. Members of the public who are here in person and want to make a comment should submit a speaker card to Ms. Rachel Frederick in the back. Those attending on Zoom who want to speak can use the raise hand feature on the Zoom screen. This month, we're continuing to welcome new members to the CAC. Not everyone could join us last month, so I'll introduce the ones that are here for the first time and let them each say a brief hello. I did get to meet Chris Willebring. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Chris Willenbring from Altamont Springs. Happy to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Our only first.
Is that our only first-time person here?
I think so.
No, Miss Rogers was here last time. For our new Metro Plan Orlando Board appointee members, we welcome Hector Lozado, Najib Maps. In April, we met Baricia Rogers and Caroline Roski. Okay. Not the most nimble guy in the world, sorry. Of course, our newly appointed members from our local governments will welcome Chris Wallenberg from Seminole County. Oh, I think I've heard this somewhere before.
And Mr. Caesar is not there.
Oh, and Mr. Caesar's not here from City of Orlando.
He was here last.
Okay. You guys are doing the tag team, is that what it is? Okay. At the May 8th Metro Plan Orlando board meeting, I shared some concerns this committee had expressed about whether the region is moving forward quickly enough in planning for the latest technology. I told them we're exploring ways to have more discussions with staff about this, and you all received an email from Ms. Horn this week asking your ideas. We have a full agenda today, so I hope we can move through this as efficiently as possible. Remember, if you have any questions that don't get answered in the meeting, Ms. Horn will follow up with presenters and get those answered. With that, I'd like to turn that over to Ms. Marianne Horn, a Metro Plan Orlando staff, who will do our agenda review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks to all our committee members and everybody attending, whether you're attending online or in the room. We are very glad that you're here. Currently, we need 15 members in the room to conduct votes. As always, it's really important to RSVP to Rachel so that we can prepare. And we still have all the Zoom and YouTube options available for the public. This is at your places again today. Why do we have it again, you might ask? That's because I know you have more ideas than you turned in last month on groups that we can reach out to for the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. All you need to do is just put your name on this, tell us that you're on the CAC, and write down some groups out in the community that you think would benefit from learning more about transportation and about what we do here. If you have a contact at that group, that's great. Put yes. You don't even need to come up with the contact information if you don't have it at hand. We'll just circle back around to you and get that. We are building a list, and it is a big list, and we want to make it bigger. And it's all the groups that we want to touch somehow with information for the 2050 MTP. You've been hearing some presentations about the 2050 plan. You'll hear more today and in the future. But there are a lot of people out there who are not at all familiar with it, who I think would really benefit from having some more information. We're going to be doing a lot of community outreach in the next few months. So please give us your ideas. This is something we really want you to do. And then you can just leave that at your place and we'll collect them. Thank you. We had a successful webinar last week with Charles Brown. And thank you to those of you who attended. For those who couldn't, I would recommend watching the video of Charles's presentation. It will change the way you look at barriers to transportation in the region. It was very well attended, and we had some good discussion afterwards in small groups, which was a first for us, and we enjoyed doing that. Next week, we have another really compelling offering from our Vision Zero Safety Speaker Series. And I think you have this, this flyer should be in your packets. Melissa Wandall is a safety advocate. She's going to share her personal story, which is a very moving story of tragedy and loss. But even more moving is the way that she responded to that by becoming a safety advocate. And she works now with FDOT's Target Zero initiative, as well as with the National Coalition for Safer Roads. And she maintains a website called Driving Down Heartache. And we're partnering in Vision Zero with drivingdownheartache.org, which is a place where people can share about their own loss and tragedy, people who have died or been seriously injured in traffic crashes. And so Melissa's webinar is going to be first rate, and I hope you can join us. It's at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, June the 4th. After that, we'll I'd also bring your attention to Dan Burden, who's a well-known speaker, sometimes known as the Blue Zones guy. He's going to be appearing at Bike Walk Central Florida's Wheel of Achievement Awards. We're going to live stream Dan's address and the Q&A on our YouTube channel. So that is another one we're looking forward to in the next week. And because no week in June can be without some sort of meeting that we want you to be aware of, on June 18th, Tuesday, June 18th, we are going to be having a virtual public meeting on the Transportation Improvement Program, our draft Transportation Improvement Program. And you are going to be hearing more about the TIP from Jason Sartorio later in today's meeting. I would like to turn it over now to Mike Wilson, who's going to give us a safety moment for June. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
As we are on the cusp of June here, I want to talk about Motorcycle Safety Month. Over 200 motorcyclists are seriously injured or killed per year in our area, nearly 50 fatalities. It's interesting about motorcyclists that probably not surprising, about 30% of those KSIs are a single vehicle. So just the motorcyclists themselves. Compare that to 17% serious crashes for cars and trucks passengers. A common concern, we see some of the more egregious behavior by probably a very small subset of motorcyclists who are traveling very fast or doing other reckless things on our roads. I thought I'd look at the data and see, how do motorcyclists in general compare when we're looking at speeding and aggressive driving. And you see they're really fairly comparable to auto and truck when it comes to, they're having what percent involve that kind of behavior for their crashes. And I might note that for the motorcyclist crashes, that could actually involve speeding or aggressive driving on the part of a non-motorcyclist, because it doesn't, it's just showing that behavior is associated with that crash. But when we get into what really does cause crashes for motorcyclists, particularly the serious ones, it's the angle and left turn crashes. And you've seen the bumper stickers, I'm sure. You look twice, save a life. We have a tendency when we look, especially if we do a quick glance like that we can look right through a motorcyclist or a fast moving bicyclist. And so really take your time to look. And then if you see a motorcyclist, take your time again because you can often misjudge their speed because of their shape and size. But what I found surprising is that another nearly 20% of serious motorcycle crashes are rear end crashes. And most of these are the motorcyclist rear-ending the stopped vehicles. And that's because motorcycles actually require more stopping distance than cars do. So a less skilled motorcyclist actually needs twice as much braking distance. Motorcycle instructors recommend that, that you really have to maintain your emergency braking skills to get them to be as good as the stopping, just braking distance of automobiles. So that's it for motorcycles this month. Also, just want to mention that with with Memorial Day, we have entered the 100 days of summer, which is where we get into a lot more teen drivers out on the road. And so, make them aware of the risks that they're subject to, and as we head through the summer toward Labor Day. And that concludes my safety moment for this month.
Yes, did we have any questions? Okay. We have one change. Thank you, Mike. We have one change on the agenda, which has been corrected for the versions that are currently online. However, in the agendas that were sent out to you last week, I think the TIP amendment listed only 2 of the 3 projects that are involved, but Mr. Jason Sartorio is going to lead us through that. I would like to invite our FDOT liaison, Ms. Amy Beckman, up for a report.
Good morning, committee members. How are you all doing? Hopefully good. Nice Wednesday morning for us, right? I am going to, for those of you who are new, just point out to you that we do have our construction report attached to the back of your agenda. We do have hyperlinks there for you to go directly to CFO Roads to check on any projects of concern. And of course, if you have any questions on any of those projects, I am here to help you. I'm going to focus in on 4 different events that are coming up that may be of interest to you or your constituents. The first is we are having a community coordination meeting on the South Orange Avenue project. It's 441145. It's from Grant to Gore Street. That is going to be taking place next Tuesday, June 4th. At the Hampton Inn and Suites downtown. There is some free parking across the street at Orlando Health. The project team will be on hand to answer questions you may have about that project. So again, that's the South Orange Avenue project from Grant to Gore Street. It's a resurfacing project, so they're going to be there to answer questions. The next one is on June 6th. It is also on South Orange Avenue project, but this one is from Magnolia Avenue to State Route 50 Colonial in Orlando. This is the purpose of extending the life of this current roadway and a resurfacing project with some ADA compliance curbs. That will be happening as a hybrid event on June 6th. So you can join online. You can also go in person to Mark Street Senior Center Recreation Complex at 99 East Marks Avenue between 5:30 and 7 p.m. And again, it will also be available online virtually if you're interested. I'm happy to get you that link so that you can attend that way. Third, we have a project for the State Route 535 Vineland Avenue Road from US 192 to north of World Center Drive. That is going to be coming up. We have a public hearing on Tuesday, June 18th. That will be a virtual option. It'll start at 5:30. Again, you need to register. It's on GoToMeeting. I'm happy to provide that information to you should you like that. In addition, we will have an in-person option on Thursday, June 20th at 5:30 p.m. That will be taking place at the Embassy Suites, Lake Buena Vista South at 4955 Kings Heath Road in Kissimmee. And lastly, I wanted to draw your attention to a event that's the FDOT Office of Safety will be participating in. It's with the Orlando Police Department. It is going to be their Hispanic Senior Safety Summit. It's taking place Tuesday, June 25th from 8 to 10:30 a.m. And it's going to be taking place in the Inglewood Neighborhood Center at 6123 La Costa Drive in Orlando, Florida. It's an annual event designed to help educate Spanish-speaking citizens on ways to prevent crime and go through things and just overall safety for those senior Spanish-speaking residents. And that is all I have for today. If you have any questions, I'm happy to hear them.
Would we be able to get a list of all of those events that you?
Absolutely. I will get an email to Ms. Horn, probably before you leave today, and we can get that out to you. And I'll attach the links as well, so you can register for those virtual options.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Oh, wait, actually, we do have a question over here on the right. Mr. Pegram. Recognize.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Ms. Beckman. I owe you a personal thank you for reaching out to me regarding my questions about stormwater management and land use and the potential to look at different ways of using stormwater management to potentially add housing or multifamily housing. I did not get back to you. I think last time I was here was in January and I had a newborn, and I think last night was the first time we got 5 hours straight between feedings.
Congratulations.
So just wanted to personally acknowledge you did reach out to me and your team reached out and you followed up, and I didn't have the mental capacity to diligently go through and respond to your requests. So I will be doing that. So I just wanted to thank you for following up and acknowledge that.
I appreciate that. Congratulations and thank you. I'm here. Just let me know. We can talk after or go through email. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And anybody find they have a question after the meeting, of course, you're always welcome to email Mary Ann Horn and she can follow up. So thank you very
Yes,
much. I
thank
appreciate
you.
it. Now I'd like to ask Miss Rachel Frederick to call the roll, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I can ask all committee members to leave their microphones off until called. Battler. Bobinger.
Here.
Bolton. Bosley. Campbell.
Present.
Caesar.
Present.
Coleman.
Here.
Council.
Present.
Davis.
Present.
El Badri.
Present.
Gus.
Present.
Lazoda. Lopez. Maps.
Present.
Mueller.
Present.
O'Hanlon.
Present.
Pereira. Peters.
Present.
Pigram.
Present.
Pizzo.
Present.
Rogers.
Here.
Roski. Salas.
Here.
Sabia. Stevens.
Here.
Webster.
Here.
White.
Present.
Willenbring.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the roll call. We do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Frederick. We'll now hear public comments on action items. Do we have people online who want to speak to any of these items? If so, please use the raise hand function on your screen or press *9 on your phone keypad. When we call your name, the host will unmute your microphone. You'll see a button pop up that says the host wants to unmute you. Accept that prompt to activate your microphone. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record. Please hold your comments to 2 minutes. Are there any comments at this time?
There are no hands raised, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any people present in the boardroom today who wish to make a comment on an action item?
I've received no comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Today we have 3 action items. The first is approval of the minutes. Okay, was Mr. Davis, and the second was Mr. Coleman. Is that correct? Or Mr. Peters? I'm sorry. Any discussion? We've got this, the approval of the CAC minutes from April 24th. It's in tab 1 of your agenda packets. Seeing no comments. Let's see, it's a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next, we're considering a request to recommend approval of an FDOT amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program. Information is provided in tab 2. Hear from Mr. Jason Sartorio of Metroplan Orlando, provide more information. Mr. Sartorio, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Jason Sartorio. This morning, I have 3 tip amendments for you. Additional information on these amendments is located in tab 2 of your agendas. The first amendment is for a resurfacing project on State Road 441 from Wadsworth Road to Lake County Line. The amendment will increase construction funding in fiscal year 2025 due to cost increases for materials. The second amendment is for eastbound and westbound passing lanes on State Road 60 from Blanket Bay Slough to Peavine Trail. The amendment will increase construction funding in fiscal year 2025 due to cost increases for materials. And the final amendment is a system-wide turnpike project being added to the tip because a small portion of the project is located in Osceola County. The amendment is for a PD&E study to widen the turnpike from north of State Road 70 in St. Lucie County to north of State Road 60 in Osceola County. As I mentioned earlier, you have some additional information on this amendment request located in tab 2 of your packets. With that being said, unless there are any questions, we're asking for your vote of approval of the amendment. Thank you.
Good morning, members. If I could ask for the council or the committee's support of especially the second and third item. I'm not sure how many people are aware. Those are both down Osceola County, southern Osceola County. State Road 60 is a site of horrendous crashes, and it's fairly remote as far as emergency response times. It's there are some passing lanes currently, but these will help save a lot of lives. And on the turnpike section, it's just the same as even the northern sections up here. It's now overcrowded. So. Move approval.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on this? Okay, Mr. Coleman, see you first and then Ms. Rogers.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, sir. My problem with these two projects is the same problem I have. We are just approving tip amendments after tip amendments after tip amendments in Osceola County. Oh, man, we got Simpson Road, Boggy Creek. There's so many projects going on right now that we're not helping. We approve some more of these projects and it's just gonna make the summer even worse. We didn't have any discussion. I don't understand anything. He say, widening the turnpike. It says 48 miles. That's not a slight widening. That's pretty long. So that's my discussion. I'm a nay, and thank you for listening.
Ms. Rogers?
Question. Does this involve where the public transportation will have a side of the road for stopping to pick up the passengers? Because right now they do not have any to pull over to pick passengers up. They just stop on the main road and that impede the traffic.
Did you want to address that?
Is that referring to the first project?
On the one yeah, with the improvement. I mean, I like how you said about the line, that, you know, not gonna make it a difference. However, would that have in mind that the public transportation will be able to have a side that they could complete pull off from the main road? Because what Mr. Coleman is trying to say is coming off, even though you have the right of way on the light to come out from the turnpike or the Simpson Road, being experience of the traffic myself, it impedes traffic with the public transportation when they are stopping to pick up the passengers.
Yeah, are you referring to bus pull-out lanes?
Yeah, in better words, there is no pull off for those transportation
Yeah, so
for the public, which is the bus lanes I'm talking about.
understood. Yeah, so adding or installing bus pull-out lanes so where the bus can pull fully out of traffic, those are considered oftentimes during a reconstruction project. Oftentimes a resurfacing or a pavement-only project doesn't have any right-of-way take. You know, adding the bus pull-out does require right-of-way, and from a transit operations perspective, they don't prefer the bus pull-out lanes because then the buses aren't able to get back into the flow of traffic. So to a an auto commuter, you might look at it as, the bus is blocking traffic, moving people. But if our culture does not let drivers, the bus driver back in, it really affects the operations of the transit. So the installation of those is used, I would say, less than it has been in the past because of the realities of operating within those, especially in congested environments. So that type of improvement would not typically be included in a resurfacing. I also think it's really important to note, the first two projects were already in the tip. They're just adding and changing the funds. The first one was a resurfacing project, an existing project. It experienced cost overages based on economic conditions. The project was already in there. It's already been approved. But we're just adding funds, and that's why it's being brought to you. The second project, this is really good news. That project was recently designated as a critical rural freight corridor, so it's receiving discretionary funds. State Road 60, there's a lot of runoff road and head-on collisions because it's a 2-lane, and there's no funds to widen the full limits of State Road 60, which is a priority, Mr. Davis, to widen 60 throughout Osceola County to the Polk County line. But that project's a safety-focused project that also has freight reliability. And then also, just to respond to Mr. Coleman's point, the reason that's such a long limits is it's actually just a study. So it's a project development environment engineering study. So that's going through the due diligence process of what is the to-do, what are the environmental impacts, what types of permitting and other next steps are required. So oftentimes the PD&E study has a longer limit. As you get through the PD&E and the project is better defined about what is the solution, what's the project going to look like, it becomes phased or segmented based on kind of the constructability and how funds are made available for those projects. So I just wanted to put that in context for the group, given that, again, two of the three projects are already existing and just experiencing cost overages based on economic conditions, while the third one is new, but it's new in the sense of oversight because the majority of the project is in the St. Lucie MPOs, kind of our counterpart to the south, their tip. But because that small segment is within our study area, based on federal planning consistency, it has to be in our tip for them to advance that work effort. So again, I just wanted to kind of give you guys full context for your decision-making today.
Ms. Rogers, did you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, let me explain the reason why. I personally was injured on the bus link up to this day, even though you see me sitting here. And the reason why that happened is because the driver of another vehicle would overtake him and rapidly jam his feet on the brakes, taking me from the back of the bus to where he was driving. I hit that iron thing that we had put the money in, the thing. And today I'm suffering with a sciatica. I'm on medication twice a day for that. And I did not sue because I understand I could have sued. I did not sue because I personally believe when we're suing, we are not suing nobody but ourselves, because we are the people are the government. And they're only gonna cause to go up because. So I didn't sue, but I'm looking out, like I told my colleagues, they does not see what I see and what I hear. I personally experienced it, and this is one of the reason I tried to join this group and bringing over my experience and my little knowledge, if it's possible. That's why I said inputs. Right. Because you all need to do something. I understand there's a money situation, a fund problem, but you have to consider that because a lot of people is getting, there's an accident there every day on that road.
Well, and we certainly appreciate your opinion and your perspective there, Ms. Rogers. And I think as Alex was trying to point out, the first two projects are already in the list. They're just making changes to the funding. Now, the turnpike widening, and as Mr. Davis pointed out, that's a different part of Osceola County. You've got the rural growth boundary up at the top. It's a totally different area down in the south. And I think that's kind of where they're going with the widening. But I'm sorry, I've got actually two more comments here. Ms.
Mine is really
Councilperson.
quick. Ms.
Sure.
Rogers. Ms. Rogers, I am so sorry about what happened to you and the pain that you suffer with. I'm truly sorry about that. How long has these projects been on our list? how many years have we been giving the extra funding for this project?
So the construction funding is in fiscal 25. I don't have the full sheet in front of me, but it would have likely have been on the list for 2 or 3 years, probably since
Okay, well,
the
it would be
intake
nice to know
process.
the exact amount of time that it's been up on there and how many years we've actually added into it. That's my question.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a word in favor of this request. I know we may not always see exactly what we want when we want it. First two have been there. We looked at them, just a modification to it. But in support of what Mr. Davis said just a minute ago, 60 needs it bad. I was there Saturday and I had to pull off twice to avoid collisions. So simple.
Thank you. Ms. Pizzo.
I'll be quick. Mine is more of a suggestion, not, maybe it's related. We need, especially with some of the new folks, not all the new folks, but some of the new folks have joined the board here recently. Maybe we need a funding 101 to help folks understand just where the funding comes from and the 5-year work program and the like, just the basics.
That is a good point. At this juncture, I would point out the very last page on our agenda today is a Planning 101 workshop. It's a full day workshop that does exactly what Ms. Pizzo is recommending. And so, you know, for those that are not necessarily familiar with all the planning processes, whatever, this might be a good opportunity for you. So my last comment, Mr. Coleman. Okay, let's make it quick.
Just a tad bit of a rebuttal. Okay, so the first project adds $4 million to this request, but we don't know how much was the original request. And as the vice lady pointed out, these things have been on the books for years. So they're just giving it to us real quick. We have a week to study for it and then vote on it. And I do understand Southern Osceola County does really need this stuff, but at the same time, we should slow down and make sure we're doing it properly. I would like to just, sorry, man, but yeah, that's my thing. And I want us to be able to have some community advisory in there. If the chairman could rewrite the vote to have some community advisory in there, I would be more comfortable with voting for it. But if it's adding $4 million to a project that we don't know, it could double the amount of the project. So the information I don't have. So next, the PD&E study for 48 miles is asking for $275,000 for a study. Who is the teachers? Who are the students? You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of money. The next, part 2 is adding $12 million. All right, fine. I'm good, yeah. But that's my comments. Thank you very much.
Yes, understood. Thank you. Thank you for your comments and noted, certainly. At this time, do I have a motion to recommend approval for the TIP amendment? Mr. Davis?
Approval.
You just called the question.
I'm sorry, we did? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I was abducted by aliens, my bad. Okay, okay, and we've had our discussion. Is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's opposed, right?
Gotta have a
It's
roll
an
call.
opposed.
Now that we have, with one opposed, we have to have a roll call, please, Ms. Frederick.
Thank you. Members can say if they're in favour or not. Bobinger. Bosley. Campbell.
Yes.
Caesar.
Yes.
Coleman.
No.
Council. Davis.
Yeah.
El Badri. Gus.
Yes.
Mott.
Aye.
Muller.
Yes.
O'Hanlon.
Yes.
Peters.
Yes.
Pigram.
Yes.
Pizzo.
Yes.
Rogers. Salas.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes,
Webster.
Yes.
White.
Yes.
Willenbring.
No.
We have 20 members present in the room. We had 19 in favour, 18 in favour and 2 against.
Thank you very much. The motion passes. Thank you very much for your input, though. I appreciate that. So next, we're asked to approve the amendment to the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Supplemental information is provided in tab 3. Ms. Taylor Laurent of Metroplan Orlando provide details. Ms. Laurent, you have our attention.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Taylor Laurent. For those who are at the orientation this morning, you heard a little bit more about the 2050 plan, which is where we're developing and refreshing and kind of getting ready for the next generation of transportation projects throughout the region. But until that is adopted, we have our ongoing 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan that we use to guide our vision up until that point. So this 2045 document is a living document and does require changes on occasion. Those include amendments, which are larger or more significant changes to the document, and modifications, which are just minor elements that we're changing for planning consistency. So both of those, while they're very different, we do take them through the exact same process. So as I flip through the presentation, you'll just see the proposed revisions. If you want a little more information, you can follow along in your agenda packets in tab 3. So to get started, the first revision is to our Complete Streets project list in the 2045 MTP. There are 5 different projects that have grown exponentially in cost over the past several years. And to be able to maintain planning consistency with our partner agencies as these projects move forward, each of these are being split into multiple phases to make them more approachable and more cost feasible on an annual basis as they're ready to move forward. So we've got those up on the screen there for a little bit of information. The exact limits of each of those proposed phases are in your agenda packets. And with these changes, all of the phases that are being proposed are cost feasible. So we have been keeping track of those rising costs over the years. And this is really just an administrative change to be able to show those new limits. The second change is the advancement of the North Street Phase 1 project from Raymond Avenue to Palm Springs. Seminole County is going to be advancing that project with local funds to be able to accomplish that work faster. So with that, we're changing the 2045 MTP to reflect that change in the funding program and priority from Seminole County. So that's moving from our Complete Streets list on Table 12 to the locally funded Seminole County projects on Table 17. So with that change, there are no impacts to other project cost feasibility. Going on to item 3, a little bit of bragging to the city of Orlando. They did receive the Safe Streets and Roads for All discretionary grant not too long ago. So we are including that in our Table 13 bicycle and pedestrian projects list for planning consistency and showcasing that federal discretionary grant that was awarded to them. So with the addition of this to the list, there are no impacts to existing project cost feasibility. Going into item 4, also to our bicycle and pedestrian list, this is the proposed addition of the Headwaters Trail from Nova Road to State Road 528 in Osceola County. This would be added as an unfunded project need towards the end of that particular priority list. There are some opportunities for other funding options for that particular project, and for the project to be considered eligible, it needs to be included on that list. So that's why it's being added as an unfunded need for planning consistency only. So with that, there are no impacts to project cost feasibility. And then we're also making one administrative modification. For those who remember, back in December, there were several projects where we changed the description to explicitly call out that the project was potentially eligible for Sun Trail program funding. We're doing that one more time. The St. Andrews Trail project was missed during that initial update, so we're adding to the project description only that it is potentially eligible for those Sun Trail program funds. So with that, there are no impacts to any project cost feasibility, just an administrative change there. And then we've got 2 more to get through. The first is the Canoe Creek Road basically cost estimate and projected phase implementation changes. So Osceola County has been getting closer and closer to implementing these two projects on Canoe Creek Road from Deer Run Road to Pine Tree Drive, and then Pine Tree Drive to US 192. There have been some cost overages, so we're updating our document to reflect those, as well as how they plan to implement and phase that project. But there are no impacts to project cost feasibility with these changes. This is purely for planning consistency. Then a few other revisions in Osceola County that do not have impacts to project cost feasibility. Again, planning consistency changes. The Kissimmee Park Road project limits were revised slightly to end at Cross Prairie Parkway. The Liberty Commons Boulevard project was removed from planning consistency. It was no longer consistent with the Osceola County Comprehensive Plan, so they've removed it from their list. So we're doing the exact same change here today. And then the last item was a bit of a consolidation of the Neovation Way project. It was included under two different MTPIDs, so on the list twice. So we're simplifying that down to remove any duplications and make sure we're showcasing the singular needs throughout our region. So that's the overview of the proposed revisions to our 2045 MTP. So unless there are any questions, I would ask for your recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. I see Mr. O'Hanlon has a question.
Yes. On these complete street projects, what are the thoughts on including cars from transportation as a subscription service in those projects? And my suggestion is that we contact City of Phoenix and San Francisco and find out what they are doing, as they have robo-taxis there, what they are doing to better enable transportation as a subscription service. Because it's already happening. And we need to make sure that we're doing something about it now. Now, I will grant you that half the Waymo cars still have observers in the back seat of their cars, but you still have like 30% of them where there are nobody in the car and the robot is picking you up. So we're at the early stages. We need to start getting prepared. And yes, I will vote yes because we don't have enough time to vote no.
Thank you, Mr. O'Hanlon. Any other questions for Taylor? I do see Ms. Albadre.
Thanks, Chairman. With regard to the complete streets projects that are going into multiple phases now, I had a question about additional costs where, how are those gaps getting filled? And then also how much more time is getting added to those project completions?
So each one of those is a little bit different, but in general for our 2045 MTP, over the past few years, we make those annual updates in December to kind of clean up the list, make sure that they're up to date as much as possible. And then when there are any significant changes, we come in with these special amendments throughout the year. As we've made those cleanups each December, we have purposefully not advanced projects to make them considered cost feasible, knowing that some of these cost overages were coming. So we were trying to be conservative with the budgeting process to keep the top priority projects, which are those 5 on that particular list, maintain each of those upcoming phases as cost feasible as well. So we weren't junking up the process and bringing something forward that wouldn't be ready or be eligible for funding. So we did not have any funding gaps in the MTP because of that conservative approach. But the additional time does vary by project. So if there's a specific one, we can follow up after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Council?
My question would be, thank you. My question would be, the projects that were removed, where's the funding that was given for those projects? Are we gonna know where they're allocated to?
So there was only one project that was brought up for removal. That was the Neovation Way project. So that's on Table 18, the Osceola County locally funded projects list. That is included for informational purposes only for planning consistency with Osceola County's planned transportation improvements. So if there's any changes in funding from their perspective, that would be reflected in their capital improvement program. For us, we're maintaining consistency, but also doing that little bit of cleanup because we didn't want it on the list twice.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to recommend approval of the 2045 MTP amendment?
Move to approve.
I second.
Albadri and council. There's a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Here none.
Nay, nay.
I'm
Yes, sir.
sorry.
Say nay.
Yeah,
I
you
don't.
said no?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that requires a voice vote. Ms. Frederick?
Thank you. Bobinger, Bosley, Campbell,
Yes.
Caesar,
Yes.
Coleman,
No.
Council,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Al-Badri,
Yes.
Gus,
Yes.
Mott,
Aye.
Mueller,
Yes.
O'Hanlon,
I guess I can vote no this time.
Peters,
Yes.
Pigram,
Yes.
Pizzo,
Yes.
Rogers, Salas,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Webster,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Willenbring.
Yes.
We have 18 in favor and 2 against. The motion passes.
Thank you very much. Motion passes. Thank you very much for your discussion, your comments. Okay, that concludes our action items. We have 3 presentations today. I'll ask all members and presenters to be mindful of the time. Members, if you have a question on the presenters or for the presenters, please stand your name card on end. Make sure when you stand your name card on end that I can actually see it. There's so much obstructing. My apologies if I miss you, just, catch my attention. Anyway, we will call on those who have questions at the end of each presentation, trying to make sure we hear as many members as possible. We have to move along because of time. Please forward any additional questions to Ms. Horn. Okay, our first presentation is a preview of the Transportation Improvement Program Annual Update. There's an opportunity for members to provide comments before next month's adoption request. A link to the document is provided in your agendas. Mr. Jason Sartorio, MetroPlan Orlando staff, will share this information. Mr. Sartorio, please proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman and committee members. This morning I'll be presenting a preview of the fiscal year 2024, 2025 to 2028, 2029 TIP. In your agenda packets, you will find a link to the draft document for your review. And the new TIP will be coming back during the June-July board and committee cycle as an action item. The purpose of the TIP is to identify all federal and state funded transportation projects for the next 5 years. The TIP also includes projects from the Central Florida Expressway Authority and from our locally funded partners for informational purposes. And the TIP is updated on an annual basis, and the 5th year of funding is consistent with the adopted prioritized project list, which was adopted in July of 2023. Projects in the TIP are categorized into 11 sections. The 11 sections of the TIP are listed on the screen. We have a total of 513 projects within the 11 sections of the TIP. And over the course of the presentation, I'm going to highlight a few of these projects. And one other note is that these 11 sections of the TIP are the same 11 sections that were in last year's TIP as well. We'll start off with the National Highway System section of the TIP. This section includes projects on the Interstate Highway System, Strategic Intermodal System, and National Highway Freight Network. In our region, a majority or all these projects are on I-4. We have a total of 19 projects in this section of the TIP with an estimated $1.9 billion in funding. And a few projects we would like to highlight. First, we have one of the Moving Florida Forward projects that will be adding additional lanes in Osceola County from I-4, on I-4 from west of County Road 532 to east of County Road 522. Next, in Orange County, we have a project that will be adding lanes on I-4 from east of State Road 522 to west of State Road 528. Also in Orange County, we have an interchange improvement project on I-4 at Darrell Carter Parkway. And finally, in Seminole County, we have a project that will be adding lanes on I-4 from 1 mile east of State Road 434 to east of US 1792. The next section of the tip is the state highway system. This section includes capacity improvements, complete streets, safety operations, and ITS investments on the state highway system. This section has 68 projects with an estimated 844 million in funding. A few projects that we would like to highlight: State Road 50 from Chuliota Road to State Road 520. This project is going to add lanes and rehabilitate pavement along a 3-mile stretch of State Road 50. Next, we have John Young Parkway at Pleasant Hills Road. This is an intersection improvement project. Next, in Osceola County, we have Fooney Steed Road from Linsfield Boulevard to Formosa Gardens Boulevard. This is also an intersection improvement. And finally, we have a truck parking site in Osceola County. Next, we'll go to complete streets. Complete streets projects consist of roadways, bicycle, and pedestrian intersection improvements that improve safety and accessibility for all users. Within the tip, we have 12 Metro Plan Orlando funded projects with an estimated 45 million in funding. A few of these projects that we would like to highlight: in the Baldwin Park, Audubon Park area of Orlando, we have Virginia Drive, Forest Avenue, Corinne Drive from State Road 527 to Bennett Road. In Apopka, we have Rock Springs Road from the North Public entrance to Lester Road. In the Kissimmee area, we have Buenaventura Boulevard from Simpson Road to Osceola Parkway. And in Castleberry, we have Winter Park Drive from Red Bug Lake Road to State Road 434. Next, we'll move on to Transportation Systems Management and Operations, also known as TSMO. TSMO projects use innovative strategies or leverage existing technology deployments to improve safety and travel time reliability. Within the tip, we have 16 Metro Plan Orlando funded projects with an estimated 37 million in funding. A few of the projects we would like to highlight: we have the Orlando Citywide Pedestrian Traffic Signals. We have the Orange County Traffic Signal Cabinet Upgrades. Also in Orlando, we have the Carrier Drive, Mandarin Drive TSMO bundle. And in Osceola County, we have the arterial traffic management system on Boggy Creek Road from Simpson Road to Narcoozy Road. Next, we'll go to the bicycle and pedestrian section of the tip. These projects include standalone bicycle and pedestrian improvement projects, including sidewalks and trails. We have 25 MPO funded projects with an estimated 52 million in funding. A few of the projects that we would like to highlight: in Pine Hills, we have the Pine Hills Trails Phase 2 from Bonnie Bray Circle to Clarkona Ocoee Road. In the Baldwin Park East Orlando area, we have the Little Econ Trail Phase 3 from Baldwin Park Street to Richard Crotty Parkway. And then we have several sections of the Shingle Creek Trail within the tip. The first is in Orange County. It's the Kirkman Road Trail from Old Winter Garden Road to Raleigh Street. Then in Osceola County, we have the Phase 2B Yates Connector. Also in Osceola County, we have the Phase 2C County Line Connector. Actually, sorry, both of those are in Kissimmee. And then last, we have in Orange County, we have Phase 4, which is Alhambra Drive Phase 4 from Alhambra Drive to Old Winter Garden Road. Next, we have Safe Routes to School. These projects include sidewalk projects within close proximity to schools. Within the tip, we have 3 projects with an estimated 1.1 million in funding. In Kissimmee, we have Phase 2 of a sidewalk gap project for Deerwood Elementary. In St. Cloud, we have Phase 1 of a sidewalk project for Hickory Tree Elementary School. And then in Kissimmee, we have Phase 2 of a sidewalk gap project that's at Boggy Creek Elementary and Parkway Middle School. Next, we have transit and commuter rail. These are 2 separate sections in the tip. The transit and transportation disadvantaged section of the tip includes operations and capital funding for links, and the tip includes an estimated 453 million in funding. And the commuter rail section of the tip includes Sunrail projects. The tip includes an estimated 657 million in funding. So as you can see, we have a lot of transportation projects going on in the region over the next 5 years. We have 280 projects in the tip that are either federal, state, or turnpike funded, with an estimated 5.4 billion in funding programmed. This does not include projects provided by the Central Florida Expressway Authority, which is investing billions into the region as well. This also does not include the locally funded projects submitted by our partners for informational purposes into the tip. And the pie chart on the screen breaks this funding down by category based on sections of the tip. We also have another pie chart that breaks this funding down based on the Metroplan Orlando funding. Within the tip, we have 59 projects that have Metroplan Orlando funding with an estimated 185 million in funding. They're broken down into roads, highways, OPS and safety, bicycle and pedestrian, and transit. So over the next few weeks, there are several steps that we are going to take prior to presenting the final iteration of the tip during the June-July cycle. Currently, the document is being reviewed by FDOT and agency partners. Once we get their comments back, we will address those. In addition, on June 18th, we will have our tip virtual public meeting. And finally, we will be conducting one last internal review of the document, including double checking to make sure all projects have the right information displayed and all of the FDOT comments are addressed. As I previously mentioned, we have our public meeting on June 18th. It's at 11:30 a.m. It's on Zoom, and there will be more information to come soon, and you can visit our website to register. And then one last thing, so at Metroplan Orlando, we are always looking to improve our process and how we display our information to the public. This year we have removed our TIP GIS web map from our website, and we've replaced it with this TIP online viewer, which is new software. The online viewer will more easily allow you to find projects displayed on the map provided on the screen. So you're able to search for specific projects, years programmed, funding source, or projects within specific sections of the tip. The map will automatically update based on whatever filters you use, and you can click on any lines within that map and it'll have a pop-up window that'll come up with all the project description, information, and funding. So this is, if you look in the top right corner, this is the interactive map. There's also, if you go to the project section, it will give you the full list of all 513 projects in the tip, just because not every single project has a line associated with it on the map. And same thing, you can click on any of the projects and it'll have a pop-up window that gives you all of the project information. And on that window, if there was a line associated with it, the little map would show as an insert as well. When we do any amendments over the course of the year, that'll show up in the plans revision tab. So if a couple months down the line, you want to look and see amendment that we approved, you can click on that and it'll show you the amendment. You can click on it and it'll give you all the project information and all the changes that occurred. And for more information, you can visit the link at the bottom of the page, or the Metroplan Orlando tip website will also bring you to the online VR. That will conclude the preview of the fiscal year 2024-2025 to fiscal year 2028-29 tip. I would like to open the floor for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. I'm going to start on the leftist side. Ms. Rogers, you had a comment or question?
Question. Are we gonna keep in consideration that with some of that fund, the highway, like John Young especially, are we gonna highlight the lines in the road? Because they're fade away, the lines in the roads, like separation.
Mm-hmm.
Are we gonna highlight those from basically the whole of John Young coming over from the Walmart from Kissimmee down to I want to say Cortman or Colonial. Are we gonna highlight those words up completely under the bridge, go right down into Colonial area? Are we gonna highlight the lines?
I would have
Because
to-
it's very faint, especially at night, you could hardly see. And I saw a lot of fatal accidents there.
We can make note of it, and FDOT is here as well.
Could you use some of that fund?
For specific projects, if it's scoped within the project.
And what, before you do that, because, you know, I noticed that you all have widened or added more lines in that area. I think it's called, I'm trying to remember the names because I'm not familiar.
Mhm.
However, the lines you cannot see, and people the traffic get impeded because of the line. They come out more that the other vehicle that coming out cannot make neither the left nor the right to go over to the turnpike.
Mhm.
John Young, when you pass the jail and you go under, that road there would need to be highlighted, the whole of that, John Young.
Okay, we'll make note
Are
of
we
it.
gonna use some money to do that?
If that project is included in, and I'll double check the limits, there's
Okay.
over 600 records in the tip
Percent.
right now. But if that project is resurfacing, reapplying the lane striping, the lines as you refer to them as, is part of a resurfacing project as well as a pavement only or a pavement maintenance project. But if that project is not included as a record within the tip, the answer is no. But your feedback is important to hear. Because that's how DOT develops their future work program, especially as it relates to resurfacing projects. They're looking at the actual pavement condition, including the thermoplastic, the lines that are on the road. But we'll double check the record. I don't think that one is in queue for resurfacing, but we'll follow up nevertheless.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rogers. On my right, we have our new member, Mr. Willenbring. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, new members, so please forgive my basic question. I noticed several points in the presentation, we saw estimated funding, and then on the pie charts, we actually didn't see estimated funding. Are those two intended to reconcile?
It's all estimated funding. The pie chart should be updated to display that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Pigram.
I actually think I
could
was
also
last
just-
of the four.
Jeff, I apologize, just to be super responsive. Something else to note while we use the term estimated funding, we're often rounding these projects to the 100th, and we're talking about hundreds of millions and sometimes billions. So oftentimes we lose, I hate to say, we lose millions in rounding on some of these larger figures. So because we're not showing the full string, we're telling you, 2.2 million, it is an estimated funding because it might be 2.2, 3, 4, 5, 6, kind of a longer string. So I just want to be clear on that. But as it relates to the values, they are absolute values as it relates to the project specifically. So estimated because we're abbreviating for purposes of our slides, but as it relates to the numbers that are in the tip, those are, that is the budget for these projects.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Pigram.
Before you sit down, Alex, this is probably something for either of you, but from a nomenclature standpoint, when we talk consolidating bicycle and pedestrian projects, I mean, we're using the word trail a lot. And that word seems recreational more than transportation purposeful. And so I'm wondering, is that because of funding opportunities that we have such a focus on trail versus bicycle network projects, meaning like between 2021 and 2026, Paris is building 112 miles of bicycle lanes. They're going to be the most bicycle friendly city in the world in 5 years because they decided to, but that's not trails. That is a network of bicycles. So I'm trying to understand when we lump those together, that bicycle piece between trail and network, and then the pedestrian piece between safety and, a transportation network to get to jobs and things within the place where I live.
Certainly. So some projects are multimodal in their purest sense. And a lot of the projects on the state highway system, they may say
widen to 4 lanes, but that widening could also include a buffered bike lane and continuous sidewalk and lighting. But that's often lost, in the project description. Similarly, when we say complete streets or the FDOT for purposes of the work program instructions, they're not allowed to use the term complete streets. So they call them urban corridor improvements. When you see that, that's also a multimodal type project. There's going to be pedestrian access, bicycle focused improvements. When you look at our bicycle and pedestrian list, it is primarily trails, or as we refer to them, shared use path, side path. And as Taylor presented at your last meeting, as we're finalize the active transportation plan, having that common nomenclature about what we're referring to in these. Trails have very specific, as it relates to certain funding, certain funding types. There's a state funding type, it's called Sun Trails money. And to be eligible for that type of money, the trail, the facility has to at least be, I believe, 16 feet, 12 to 16, don't quote me on that, but I'll come back. But that matters because if you don't build to that spec, you are ineligible for the funding type. A lot of the funds that we have as shared use path, that's where we're doing our very best to have the widest facility within right-of-way constraints or other physical barriers. So sometimes you'll see some variation, it'd be 12, it'd be 8, just to kind of make do, kind of meandering between power poles and things of that nature sometimes too. But that is often lost, and that's a good point, Jeff. A lot of our projects do include other intermodal or multimodal improvements, but they're often lost in the bigger, where the pedestrian and bicycle lists primarily trail projects. But we also have sidewalk bundle projects that also fall under that category. And we're advancing a few of those through some pre-planning, feasibility, and construction as well over the next few years.
Do materials also factor into that, like asphalt versus concrete?
That's part of the design. So as the projects evolve, from long-range planning estimate, we're using averages looking out. But as the project goes through that project development and environmental study, and as it enters the preliminary engineering, the design phase, that's where there's a determination of the material. And if you use asphalt, you have to do this. And I'm not an engineer. You use there's different kind of costs, just different costs associated, even the constructability. But that's all determined in preliminary engineering. And this is a great point going to your TIP amendments. As the projects evolve, you learn more about the projects, what it's going to take to implement the project. So that's why when we put it in the TIP 5 years in advance, it's at $1. And that's because we haven't even done a study yet. So we don't know what it's really going to cost. But as the project evolves, before it's pre-construction, we know what it's going to cost based in today's unit cost, based on an average, of everything that the DOT is doing. And that's where you start seeing cost increases or us adjusting the budgets, is because we know more about the project a couple years in advance, where we don't have that same resolution in the data. It's 5 to 7 years because the necessary studies haven't taken place yet. So that's why you often see TIP amendments for cost increases a year, current year, or the year in the next following year. It's because of the procurement process, and DOT or local governments cannot procure these projects unless they are fully funded. So the TIP amendments allow these projects to advance. If we don't add the funds through the TIP amendment process, that bid packet, that procurement package is not allowed to go be advertised, not allowed to hit the streets. So there are kind of economic impacts to that as well. And that's why, as Taylor mentioned, we try to hold reserves to kind of keep the projects in motion, knowing that there are, significant ramifications, both to kind of job creation, but also project delivery. So it's quite the balancing act. I know I covered a lot of ground there, but I hope that provided some better context to y'all today.
Thank you, Alex. Judy, you had a comment as well? Question
Oh,
or
yeah.
comment?
I wasn't going to comment, but I've got additional comment here. I wanted to add I'm tagging on to Jeff's comment here on the bike commuter lanes. The whole United States is so far behind Europe in bicycle commuting. It's obscene, it's embarrassing. And I say it's embarrassing because coast to coast trail from St. Pete over to Titusville, I had the privilege of working on some of the gaps back in the day. And I am still on the Coast to Coast Trail Facebook page. It is real, it's out there, where bicyclists, enthusiasts from all over the world come to do our Coast to Coast Trail. We're failing them. We are really failing them. The comments, even the areas that are complete, it's like, that's a good try. Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but yes, I did. That being said, go on the Coast to Coast Trail Facebook page. It's real educational about what we need to do to ramp up. But that's not really the commuters. The commuters, again, we're failing them. We're in the TIP program. First, Jason, great presentation. I'm looking at your presentation here, and we're adding lanes. We're widening lanes. Why are we still doing this? Why are a big chunk of that pie chart is going to I-4, which is obsolete? Why are we doing that? It just infuriates me. And that's one of the reasons I'm here as an advisory person to say what I'm saying. We've got to look at this, reevaluate how we're spending our money. We just keep building more roads, widening roads, where it should go into finding alternatives to our transportation. I know this gentleman doesn't like it when I say trains or anything else, but it's what we should be doing. I mean, this is insane. So I-4 and State Road 50, we're adding lanes. I don't know why. The money is better spent elsewhere. Then you talked briefly about the Sunrail commuter funding. Is that finally going to be 24/7? Because commuter is 24/7. So that is probably the question I had after my dissertation here. So Sunrail 24/7 yet?
As far as Sunrail goes, no changes to services.
Take commuter off of it then. It's just Sunrail.
Yeah. Good point. Mr. O'Hanlon, you have a comment or observation, sir?
Yeah, two things. Jeff, you're right on the money. Your comments are so timely. With the advent of the e-bikes, these trails need to be a connector network so people can get to work. It's not just recreational trails. Second, same thing with complete streets. When these projects were started, that the design criteria were correct. Well, today the design criteria is no longer correct. It's urgent. It's like an emergency. Contact San Francisco and Phoenix and find out what we got to be doing for transportation as a subscription service. There are robot taxis all over those places. They are far ahead of us. Let's go learn before we're about to spend a lot of money here to only redo it within the next year or two. And I'll vote yes if I have to, but
It's not an action item, but appreciate your vote of confidence. Ms. Council, you actually have some as well?
Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you for your presentation. I know we seem a little bit, some of us that want to know where the money's at and what's happening, but we're all here for the same reasons because we care about our community. When I moved to Kissimmee 13 years ago, there was less than 200,000 people in the Osceola area. Right now, there's over 400,000 people, and we have an over amount of crashes, accidents, whatever word we want to use today, and the trails, which should be, our bike trails for our children, for people that want to ride the bikes. We don't have any in the Ponciana area at all. Okay, so there is no connecting from one thing to another. You got to drive up to Kissimmee to get to one of the trails and then be able to enjoy it. So when we ask about where is the money going and all of these questions, is because each and every person here, they care, and we're all here for that purpose because we care. So thank you for explaining everything and giving us such a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I actually have a comment as well. I see a common theme here. People, have different priorities, values, is it a recreational facility? Is it a commuter facility? Is it whatever? What kind of material is going to determine what kind of use it is, whatever. I'm reading through a lot of the descriptors here, and I see things that I question. It's not really fully descriptive. Like, for example, new accessible pedestrian signals. And I'm just curious if you could kind of elaborate on that. And here's the reason for my question, my comment. I notice that a lot of the mast arms that are going in around, like, for example, Michigan and Conway Gardens, Summerlin, whatever, the pedestrian button is pointing towards the grass, towards the road. And so people in wheelchairs can't even access them. Now, here's the irony, is the one on Summerlin was clipped by a truck. They took it down and they re-put it up the same way, wrong. I go figure. So frustration, I'm thinking, do we continue to give money to the DOT, to the local agencies, whatever, to continue to build like this? I mean, Orange Avenue, anybody driven down Orange Avenue recently? I avoid Orange Avenue because you take your life in your hand because you can't even figure out where the lane is. And I'm actually a pretty proficient driver. We want at least some voice in how our money's being spent. And all we have really is a presentation, not to impugn your work. You did a great job. You did a fine job. But I'm just left scratching my head. Like, for example, can you answer that? New accessible pedestrian signals, are they, or Mike or anybody, do we know what those are? What are we paying for?
So
Taylor, I'm sure Taylor's approaching that.
I was gonna say, I have a project description for the majority of the projects, but I don't for the TISMO ones, but yeah, you want to provide some input?
Yeah, without seeing the full scope in front of me, typically an accessible pedestrian signal is one with an audible cue. So that's where we're getting into Americans with Disabilities Act requirements and upgrading that to be able to provide audio as well as visual cues for those who are waiting to cross the street. That's typically what that means. Without seeing the scope, I can't guarantee that's exactly what we're talking about for this particular project. But a lot of what I'm hearing as well are elements and questions that usually come up during the design phase when there's public involvement and engagement happening closer to when the projects are coming forward. So as we're getting these descriptions and very high level information now, this is usually anywhere from 5 to 7 years in advance of when work is actually going to be completed. So as we get closer, as Alex mentioned, we get more information about the area, what's going to happen, what the project costs will be. We also learn more about what those materials are and can make these decisions and changes to make sure that what we're building does meet the needs of the community. So I know that we usually share information about those public meetings as well. That's another place to get involved and be able to share your thoughts directly on each individual project as they come forward. So I think
Thank you
that's
very
another
much.
opportunity to have feedback.
I would point out, when we, MetroPlan, when we have the day where we take out our policymakers and we blindfold them and to show them what it's like to cross the street, we kind of cherry pick. This is a really nice, safe area. We're going to actually have a person right next to you to make sure you're safe and all that. And yet right down the street at Links at, Livingston and Huey, right? It's a newly constructed crossing there where you have to cross the street to go to the little pork chop to activate the pedestrian signal. It's like, so the person who's blind has to cross the street first in order to press the button. They don't use that for the example of how well we're doing. And so I just kind of wonder if policymakers actually really know what the community is up against. You know what I mean? So I've got a real problem with it. I've actually voiced this a number of times on the 311 app to everybody, saying we need to quit building like this. And I think that's where a lot of this frustration I see coming from. I heard it, from Mr. Coleman a while ago. I see his eyebrows going up and down, what do? Do we vote against these projects? Say, no, we're just gonna say no more money. No more lanes for I-4, no more whatever, because I just don't see any change. We keep doing the same thing, expecting different results.
We appreciate your feedback. Thank you.
Taylor, you're doing a great job too. I'm not meaning to throw darts at you either. You guys are doing great. Just so you know, that's the way I kind of see things. So, Mr. Davis, you also have a comment, sir?
Just an observation. Generally speaking, I completely agree. There's way too many people here. If I had my way, I'd take us back to 1965. This place was paradise when I was a kid. I'm assuming the majority of these people here have gotten here in this room have gotten here since 1965. You got to figure out when you want to shut the
I'm a
door.
6th generation Floridian, all right? So
I'm with you.
Okay.
But I'm sure most or a lot of the people who complain about all the new development are part of the previous new development.
Yeah.
But my second observation is, and I'd be happy to shut down development, but in the same breath, we all complain that housing is too expensive. You only get your choice of one of those. You cannot have less expensive housing and less development. It's supply and demand simply. And so it's really a no-win situation unless the state of Florida just becomes much less attractive to move to. We're stuck in a downward spiral.
And I guess our final comment, Ms. Council.
Is there a way, I know that most of the projects that come up for study are put in and are voted on, but these votes that you mentioned before that were done several years ago in the pre-planning that Ms. Taylor said, I've noticed that in the area that I'm in, there's a lot of people that don't vote for anything and they're not privy on how people vote. The biggest problems that I've seen right now is that we have streets in my area, I'm talking about Ponciana, that have no lights, no sidewalks, no anything. So I've seen several projects come up over and over again that are not as dangerous as the streets that we have down there. The one project that I saw up there, that was the Deerwood project. I've been fighting for that for 5 years for that sidewalk. I walked that sidewalk just because I walked that sidewalk. And the sidewalk is not even all the way down to Peabody. So there's another 2 whole streets that have no sidewalk, that every single morning I see parents and children walking across of it. And it just hurts me because I see $1 billion here, $844 million here. I mean, that's money that most of us in this room have never, ever seen. And we don't even know if we're gonna. But those streets, 5 years, that's how long it takes to get one light there. When in other places, you're changing out lights. Why aren't the ones that you're changing out that still work, you put them down there so then we can have some safer streets? So that's just a comment. Sorry. Thank you.
Mr. Davis, you had something to add on that? Got it. Thank you very much. That's fine. We'll entertain this.
Okay? When you moved there, there were no sidewalks. Yeah, and there were no streets. And you paid less for your house because there were no sidewalks and no streets. The monies we're talking about here don't apply, believe it or not, to your development. Your local elected official, tell him, raise your taxes and pay for your street and your side lights. Okay? Yeah, I know. Don't bother doing it, right? Because these monies here are not going to pay for that. Okay? Throw darts at me, call me the bad guy or whatever. But if we want to get something done, you need to approach the right people who can make that decision for you. This is not the right group. I'm sorry.
Actually, I have looked at what the developer agreed to when they built Poinciana.
Thank you.
They actually agreed to build the Poinciana Parkway and all of this. And then whenever Atlee Mercer came before our body and said, hey, by the way, no, we're not asking for any more money. And then all of a sudden, yes, we want more money. Now, everybody in Osceola County has to pay for the Osceola Parkway as opposed to the developer. I actually went head to head against the developer on the planning commission. You know, so that whole argument is garbage. They agreed, they signed their name on the line and they reneged on their contract. You've got it in, I'm just telling you, that's how it is. And I can show you in the document where it happened. Just so you know.
But that's not the original development. That was originally a fly-and-by land development where people, they went up north in the middle of winter and sold them on monthly lots. And then I originally built some of the first houses, long drive, short drive, cart court. Avatar was not in the shelter business. They saw us building, they decided it was a good deal. They quit selling this to us and started in the land business. But it's morphed over lots of time.
Yeah.
That, the agreement you're talking about is halfway through that development. The original houses in a lot of those neighborhoods were built there. No, that was not an urban development, and it didn't have streetlights, it didn't have sidewalks, and the people bought there, and we sold cheap. They bought there because we sold cheap houses out there. My first houses were $39,900, including the land and everything, screen porch, garage. That's why they bought it there. Now it's going.
Mr. Chair, if I may, we've strayed far from the agenda on
We
this.
have.
We would like to have some more discussion in which people can bring in things outside our agenda. We understand there's some desire for that. We are working on setting up a date for that. You will all be invited to that. But in the meantime, I believe we have gotten, gradually, we have moved very far from where we should be.
Understood. Point taken. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
And thank you very much for your presentation. Did you
Yeah, I've
have
got
a-
one comment regarding your comment, Dr. Stevenson. So the projects on the slides, they just have like the very short description that FDOT gave. In the instance that anyone asks any questions, I have about 70% of the information in front of me that I could answer. But during the TIP public meeting, this is only meant for a 10 to 15-minute presentation. During the TIP public meeting, we have about an hour and we go into a deeper dive on those projects. So if anyone's interested, you can tune into the TIP public meeting and get some more information.
Also, shameless plug, that TIP online viewer, it allows the information to be accessible to what's in my neighborhood. It allows you to drop a comment on there, say your piece. Say, how come I don't have it in my neighborhood? It's not just about commenting on the projects that are in front of you. This is an opportunity to say, what about, and if there is a design, say the design is funded in 2027, the design should include A, B, C, and D. Did you know this is occurring? So take this as a constructive and productive opportunity to provide your feedback. While we may not be able to incorporate and find the $100 million and move the money around, it's a public opportunity to contribute to this, to provide that information to our decision makers. And that's really Jason's role in this is kind of, administering this process, hearing your feedback. We may not be able to answer every question, may not be able to give you what you'd really like out of it, but we're going to relay that message to our board. So again, please take this as a productive, constructive opportunity to provide your feedback. And that tool allows you to zoom in, type it in at your convenience, whether it's your phone, computer, but also if you have other comments, email Marianne, email Jason. And as I've said at prior meetings, this is not your only opportunity to communicate with us. The agenda goes out a week in advance. If you see it and have a question, as simple or as, naive as it may be, don't hesitate to reach out. Not every question has to be answered at this podium in this forum. We'd be more than happy to engage with you, bring you up to speed, at your convenience. So please
you're
keep that
right,
in mind.
because Marianne pointed out, we're all guilty of that. She does not receive any comments before the meeting. Yet they put out that call, so understood. Moving forward, but thank you so much. I appreciate you adding that too.
Mr. Chairman, Teresa Mott.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Teresa Mott. I move to approve the presentation.
It's not an action item.
Oh, it was, okay.
It's not an action item. It's not an action item. But we can discuss this ad nauseum because it's not an action item. So we want to talk about this afterwards. We're good to go. But we have a presentation from Mr. Slade Downs of Metro Plan Orlando, preview the annual update to the prioritized project list. Again, it's an opportunity for comment in advance of the request for adoption. Your agenda contains a link to this document. Mr. Downs, ready for your presentation.
All right, thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. I'm Slade Downs, Transportation Planner here at MetroPlan Orlando. I'll be walking you through the preview of the annual prioritized project list update. So some background, the PPL is essentially a bridge between our Metropolitan Transportation Plan and the TIP that Jason just spoke about. It's think of it as kind of the on-deck circle for the 10 years following TIP. This plan is updated annually. It contains a list of federally and state funded projects that, again, we're anticipating based on funding and estimates. So the PPL is stays planning consistent with the MTP. In the MTP, we've already established the kind of needs, cost feasibility, the cost forecasts, those sorts of considerations. So in order to stay planning consistent, we pull from the MTP. It's also consistent with board direction on policy, performance-based process, and prioritization. The project's eligibility is also outlined in the PPL. Certain funding sources come with certain requirements and certain strings. So some projects may qualify for some buckets of money and not others. So that all is outlined in the PPL as well. The end goal of the document is to continue advancing high quality projects and project phases. So here is a framework of the different funding programs. They line up a lot with kind of what Jason was just speaking on in the TIP. Each one has an informational sheet within the PPL, and that is linked in your agenda packets if you'd like to take a look, but I'll be giving a brief overview of each of these programs over the next couple slides. So first up, we have our interstate highway and strategic intermodal system. The sheet for this is on page 12 and the full list is on page 25. These are our key priorities. Next, we have the key priorities for our state highway system and state roads. You can find the full informational cut sheet on page 13, as well as the full project list starting on page 26. Next, we have our key priorities for our off-system construction assistance program. The key priorities for that can be found on page 32 and the informational sheet on page 14 of the PPL. Then we have our Complete Streets program. These are the priority phases. You can find more information on page 15 and then the full list on page 33. We have our TSM&O program. These are our priority phases. You can find the cut sheet on page 17 and the full list on page 35. Next, we have our pedestrian bicycle infrastructure projects. Have the information on that program on page 20 and the full list on page 38. We have safe routes to school. You can find more on page 21 and the full list on page 40. Next, we have our critical sidewalk gap bundles program. You can find the key priorities there as well as the informational sheet on page 22 and the full list on page 41. And lastly, we have regional transit projects. These are key priorities. You can find more on page 23 and the full list on page 50. So I know I breezed through that pretty quickly. That was kind of intentional. I'm hoping that you guys will take a look at the full plan itself and provide us some feedback. The next steps are to go to the rest of the advisory committees as well as the board, working to solicit that feedback on the projects within the list. kind of keep in mind? Are there any kind of surprises to you? Do you think that there's any considerations that should be taken into place with some of these projects? Just kind of that sort of thing. We're requesting that feedback by June 7th so that we can have time to get the edits made for action, which will be at the next committee cycle. So I'll be coming back to all of you in about a month to hopefully approve with the additions and amendments made to the final plan. And then that will go to our full board on July 10th. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions. I just noticed my email is not up there, but you can shoot me or anyone else on staff an email if you have any comments or suggestions. My email is slade.downs@metroplanorlando.gov. Thank you.
Wonderful. I see Mr. Pigram, you have a question, comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Observation?
Just for clarification, the slide regarding safer paths to school or safer connection?
Safe routes to school.
Safe
yeah.
routes. So, okay, that term routes, that can be not only pedestrian facilities, but alternative multimodal facilities as well, or is it only pedestrian connectivity?
I believe that's just pedestrian connectivity. Yes, yeah.
Exclusive to sign.
It's a yes.
DOT funded statewide program.
Similar to my other comment, just nomenclature, that's why it's targeted that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Hanlon?
I do want to go back to Alex's comments. So many great concerns of improvements that need to be made were raised today. His new program, it's all laid out. You put your comments in there, that gets forwarded to the people who can fix your problems. Okay, some of these monies here are not for that, but that can be sent to the right people to get that fixed. So thank you, Alex. That's a great program.
Good, good. Any other comments, questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mueller.
I'm gonna.
Want to turn on your mic?
Off of both the TIP and the PPL. So based on some of the comments that were given here, last time I talked about the word bicycle. I think we need to get rid of that word bicycle. It's micro mobility. I mean, that's the way it is today, and we need to start moving forward and get out of that mindset, because they're not bicycles, they're micro mobility devices that have electric motors on.
That's so much easier to say.
I hear you. I also want to make the push for the shared pathways, because when I ride my bike on a bike lane, there's this guy in the back of my head who's just with a hammer telling, don't get on this bike lane, you're going to get hit from the back. When I'm on a shared pathway, that guy doesn't exist anymore. So, I'm just putting my push in for that. We need to get out of this 5-foot bike lane pathway on the side of 45-mile-an-hour roads. I don't know why we don't see roundabouts. I just don't get it. In Wisconsin, where I come from, there's a roundabout in every single corner. They're half the price or less of a street light, and they just move traffic. So I would like to push for roundabouts instead of street lights in certain positions. I'm seeing over the last couple of 3 meetings, this swelling consensus by people in this committee that are finally speaking out against widening lanes and all of this kind of stuff that we keep doing over and over. I think you put it right real well. We keep doing the same thing and expecting some different results. But I think a lot has to do with how development builds. And I saw one thing on the tip, which was Highway 50 is being widened from Chiliota Road to 520. Now, I know that area pretty well. Why is that? Well, the reason is because somebody somewhere expects development out there. Why else would you 6-lane a road that goes to nowhere unless you're going to do something with that roadway? I remember when the 408 went in out here, long years and years ago. And I used to drive that thing to work, and I was the only car on the road. And I would go, why is this road here? Well, it's because you know, somebody was thinking of Avalon Park and all that places out there. So somehow or another, developers need to be incentivized to build inside the urban service area, not outside in the rural service area where land is cheaper, it's easier to build, and that kind of thing. I don't know how that works in this, how Metro Plan gets involved with that, but that's really what has to happen, because the driving force behind that road is development and people wanting houses out there instead of tearing down old dilapidated strip malls and putting in 3-4 story, you know, apartment complexes with stores underneath. So those are my comments. Take it for what it's worth, and I appreciate oh, there's one thing I do want to mention. At the last meeting, I started on this bandwagon with a bunch of other people in here, and this is no reflection on the planners. I think you guys do a great job, and I don't want anyone to feel like they're not doing a job that, you know, as a planner or a technology person or anything like that, because this is a ship that's really hard to turn. So I appreciate everything that everyone is doing in Metro Plan and the other organizations, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And one comment I have to add to that is, but you mentioned roundabouts. There's not a specified roundabouts list in the PPL, but there are a good number of projects that include roundabouts, most of which I believe are in our complete streets list, if you want to take a look at some of the projects there.
Wonderful. Thank you. Judy?
Thank you, Chair. I apologize, I missed most of your presentation, but I got caught up here real quick. Yes, on the roundabouts, they're actually one of the safest. You're going to have fewer, almost no fatalities. I think there was a study done by the US DOT roundabouts versus signalized intersections. And there might have been in the period of time that they did this study, and I forget the exact years, 1 fatality in a roundabout, or maybe 2, and it was a pedestrian involved, not paying attention, not car or vehicular. And the accidents you do have in a roundabout are going to be a glancing blow, not a T-bone or rear end, that sort of thing, or head on. The other thing you'd mentioned was the bike lanes. Yes, why are we only putting 5-foot bike lanes on the side of a road? Why aren't they 10-foot or 12-foot? Let's segue onto what he had said earlier. Jeff had said, you know, let's make this commuter line for the, what was the word to use? The micro mobility that's out there. I've got a niece that's got an electric tricycle. I didn't even think they made them. It blew me away. That's basically all my comments. And yes, you guys, the whole staff here, you do an incredible job, and you're just the messengers. So don't take this personally, what we have to say here. Thank you.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Thank you.
And I know that I appreciate the comments. I also I know that FDOT has a good web page, some good resources on kind of the roundabout statistics you were just talking about.
Great. Slade, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation. Mike, we have a presentation from Mr. Mike Wilson. You have 14 minutes here. Sorry, you always get shortchanged on this, but what you have to say is very important. So give us an update on the Vision Zero Central Florida activities.
Here in the back. This is an important presentation, and we need to do.
Yes.
Sorry, somehow or other, we skipped a bunch of slides here, so we're reopening the presentation. There we go. Okay. All right, good morning again. So we are closing in on the home stretch of our Vision Zero plan. So I wanted to give you kind of an overview of what the draft plan is going to have in it. So here's an outline of the chapters of that action plan. And, you know, this is the regional plan. As you probably all are aware, you've heard me talk many times, there are also county and municipal plans happening concurrently. And so they will all be following this same pattern and will all complement, and local plans will help to inform the regional plan. So you can see here, you know, covering the need, understanding the data, how we've done outreach, looking at the core strategies, developing projects, as well as just a general plan of action, not just projects, but also how do we reach out to the public and change behavior. And then how do we track everything that we're doing and make sure that we're achieving what we want to achieve. So yeah, like most plans, you know, we'll start off with an executive summary to kind of give you that overview of what we're going to be doing and who's going to be doing it. The first chapter really getting into, you know, what is the Vision Zero process? How does it differ from previous efforts at safety? All of the elements and strategies that go into a Vision Zero plan. Then we get into the crash trends. You know, this has to be a very data-driven process. You know, the data is going to tell you what you need to focus on and where you need to put that focus geographically. As I mentioned, you're listening to the community. We've been out there, all of our teams in the general public. We've had more than 1,000 interactions face-to-face, as well as many online. So we've really had a robust outreach on this, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback from people to help us to round out the details, you know, of this plan, to identify things that maybe the data doesn't show us. The local coordination of, as I mentioned, we have all these local plans, all following the same process and using the same data set. And then we've been developing documents to help the locals be consistent so that all the plans have the same look and feel. People, when they go from one plan to the next, will be familiar with that outline. A really key part of this is the strategy. The chart on the right looks at the 5 core types of strategies where you're going from the most effective, but often also the most difficult to implement, with removing severe conflicts and speeds, you know, down to lower cost, more behavioral approach. And so all 5 of these can have both engineering and non-engineering approaches. And then we want to have, you know, the policies at the higher level that are going to make sure that those engineering and non-engineering efforts are codified, you know, and that are become official and ongoing. We have a project development process where we've identified a high injury network and identified the kind of countermeasures that we know are going to work across the board, such as speed reduction, focusing on transit crossings, pedestrian crossings, et cetera. And then looking at all the countermeasures for those, and that then leads us to a list of prioritized projects that we can incorporate into a plan and get funded and built. An example, when we get down to the corridor level, looking at, for example, here, John Young Parkway between, I believe, Colonial and Orange Center Boulevard, you have more general recommendations, so having to do with, say, speed and lighting, and then more specific recommendations at particular intersections where we see certain types of crashes, looking at the types of countermeasures for those. And so this helps us then to develop a corridor concept in it, which will eventually becomes a project for addressing the needs on that corridor, or at least helping to inform other projects. Say there's a resurfacing project where there are opportunities to make those types of improvements, even if we don't have enough for doing the bigger, more expensive wholesale type of changes that are really needed. The prioritization process. This is, you know, as we're bringing projects through not only the safety prioritization, but also the long-range plan, MTP plan, we're going to focus on the safety history, where are the most crashes happening, focus on areas where we have disadvantaged communities, because they are inordinately suffering from traffic crashes. Weighting the benefit, the generalized type of benefits that we're going to have for the project. Also throwing in a factor there for regional benefit. How important is it from a regional standpoint, from a safety standpoint? And then how easy or difficult is it to implement? You know, we want to give priority to things that are quick to implement that then also have potentially really high payoff, you know, the most bang for the buck, of course. You know, a really core part of this is setting that target. And so we've set the target of reaching zero by 2050. That gives us then our timeline, or what points along the way do we need to, you know, reach goals, and so that we know that we're on target, right? It's not all going to happen in the last 5 years. I mean, hopefully it starts happening immediately. The general plan organization. Again, it's the strategies, the elements, the safety elements. What are the actions? Who's going to be doing it? Over what period of time? And then how do we measure it? You know, that's the essence of the plan. And then we have all these actions that we want to focus on that we're going to be part of the flow, part of our ongoing work to get to zero by 2050. And so that's, you can see the laundry list here of things that we need to work on an ongoing basis. So this isn't just do a plan and then move on, right? This is a plan for how we are going to continue to implement safety efforts from here on through 2050. And then the performance metrics, you can see the long list here. That there are so many aspects to safety that you need to measure a variety of things to give the detail, to give you a clear picture of what you're achieving along the way. And then to help all of the anyone who's monitoring the plan, who's implementing the plan, a slew of technical appendices that get into all the data, the policies, depending on what your role is in the process. I'm sure there's a technical appendix for you. In addition to this plan, we are looking to submit for another planning grant, supplemental planning. You know, this is, again, just the beginning. We've identified more needs, more things that we need to work on from a planning standpoint to be successful. And so we've identified public participation elements, more data and reporting elements, starting to get out into the field and do safety audits on the high injury network to get a better picture of what those corridors need. And then consolidating, you know, with the locals, and then and updating the plan. And we're also talking about how do we keep our regional Vision Zero task force functioning, and, you know, what will their role be going forward. So the deadline for that application is August 29th. And so we'll be asking for feedback from everyone and with our Vision Zero task force. We have to match that as before, so we're kind of limited on funding as to what we can ask for because we have to match it. But that's our next step beyond this plan. And then here's the timeline for this plan. In the coming month, in June, we'll be getting you the draft for you to review, and we'll be taking feedback through August 9th so that we can then go to all of the committees in August for a September board approval of the plan. All right, well, and that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mike. Well, yeah, I do see some questions. Anybody on the side? Got it? Mr. Pigram, start off.
Mike, as always, phenomenal presentation, just methodical process. This is where we're at, this is where we're going, and these are the long-term targets. And I think we hear from you arguably more than anyone else on the progress of this initiative. And I think it's very bold, and glad to see that there's a vision and a target here. I think something that you and I have kind of talked in these meetings previously is, how do we cross the Rubicon from everything your team is learning and take those learnings and make it the minimum design criteria, such as what the chair was describing with the ADA button on a mast arm? That's not how we do things anymore. It's over here to keep people away from the intersection. Because I guess my concern is part of that 2050 goal is the action plan, which is your sixth step in your process, is a reaction plan. Because we haven't necessarily solved the root cause, which is the minimum design criteria. And so the next 25 years is chasing the problem, which is the minimum design criteria we feel is no longer appropriate, but we haven't been able to influence that change.
You're right. And for many years, we've been hamstrung, not so much from a minimums standpoint, but, a key thing is how we set speeds on our roads. That until just very recently, has been fairly stagnant. We've been kind of hemmed into this 85th percentile speed approach, which keeps driving our speeds up. Well, that has finally changed at the federal level. It's changed at the state level with their target speed process. So now we have tools that we could use that we couldn't in the past. Money is still always the rub. So, getting to that target speed that you want might cost more than you can afford. So there's always that. The other thing, there was a lot of discussion about design. Again, we're a planning agency and we don't do design, and we're dependent on design standards that come from the federal level and from the state level. And there are, no doubt, there are things that are done, that are implemented, that aren't up to current designs, that could be done better. But in some cases, things might be done in ways that maybe aren't clear to the average person, but they have actually been well thought out from a design standpoint.
Thank you. Ms. Pizzo, and then Ms. White, I had to close this out, and be mindful of the time. Our meeting is at 20.
Always like it. Very good presentations, a lot of information. 26 years, 2050. And I'm sitting here, I'm listening to this presentation, and having been a transportation planner, I know there's steps. And having worked with designers and engineers, I know it's a box that they are in. It is so very frustrating. The intersection you showed in one of your slides, I see the free flow rights. That is the most dangerous thing for a pedestrian, because we're all guilty of it. We're looking to the left as we're flying through that thing on the right, and here's this poor person. I hated free flow rights, and it's so frustrating. Where did the timeline? Who decided it's going to take 26 more years to get to zero? And I know all the mechanics behind it, but why do we have to wait 26 years? And how many people every year are killed between now and then, when we could be doing something sooner? And I know you can't answer that. It's just my comment and my frustration that it's going to continue. We're going to continue to see so many people die.
Very good, Judy. Thank you. Ms. White.
Yes, and talking about continuing, I can always count on you, Mike, for the public health support. Two things is, I saw that through the grant that the safety books for kids are being translated. Into what languages are they being translated?
If we are successful.
I'm going to believe that you will be successful. So thank you. And second, the speaker series, was it recorded for later viewing?
Yes.
Great. And how can we find the recording links?
Should be on YouTube. correct?
If you go to our YouTube channel, and if it's not appearing on the front page there, right now, Charles is very recent. I think he's showing up on the main page, but you can go to the live button, which is the live streams of all of our meetings and so forth, and he'll be there.
YouTube playlist, sorry about that. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike.
All right.
Wonderful presentation. We appreciate it. Can we go around the room just real quick? I know, a lot of times people don't have an opportunity to speak, people like myself that talk all the time. Ms. Mott, starting on this side, have anything to add to our meeting? Member comments? Member comments? Ms. Rogers, you have anything to add? I figured you'd have something to add all the time, but I'm just saying, so.
That, I will, not adding, it's just that after watching, Mr. Brown, I'm wondering and trying to evaluate, is this the changes they're making, the new changes that they're making now with the mistake they have done in the past? They're changing it, trying to make it better?
I think that's been kind of the takeaway with all of this is how can we take what we're learning now and implement it? So I don't know. I don't know what the answer. Nobody has to seem to have that answer right this second, but we're working on it, I guess, right? Mr. Coleman, did you have anything to add before we?
The question. Sorry, 1 second. The presentations or the upcoming meeting, no, the presentation, general information. Planning Academy 101. I would like to take that. I don't know what I got to do.
You go to the last page in our full agenda, page 63, and there's a flyer there.
Okay.
And they have information on it, right?
Yeah,
Is
so
what you're gonna
that
mention?
is something that the American Planning Association Orlando Metro Section chapter is putting on. So as your chair correctly noted, if you go to that link there, you can register yourself if you're interested in participating in that. Just something that we're calling to attention to our partners. It's not something that Metro Plan Orlando is specifically convening ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Ms. Council?
No, thank you.
Campbell?
I just want to say to our guests, to our presenters, that to make sure that they know that we appreciate them as a committee. Often,
Yes.
it comes across like, someone may be angry about something, doesn't like something, but we appreciate you and what you do and say thank you to you.
Very good. Yes, that's right. Anything to add? Mr. Pigram?
Thank you, Chair. I think this will probably be the third time that I make this request, but I would really like if we could or understand why we can't have somebody from the airport here to go through their long-range plan, because everything that they do in terms of adding flights, adding gates, creates more trips, which impacts the roads in the vicinity, whether it's Osceola Parkway, 417, 528. By the end of next year, Brightline is going to be expanding the size of each train by 75%. That's the equivalent to an airline saying, we're going to have 20 more flights to and from the airport every day.
Right.
What is their plan to address their transportation constraints in the broader context of the region?
Good point. Quick opportunity to add final comments. Benjamin, by chance, Ms. White, anything? Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that we went around the room. Thank you, Marianne, for reminding me that this is so important. Okay, our next in-person CAC meeting, June 26th. Remainder of the committee meeting dates are in your agenda, posted on the calendar, metroplanorlando.gov. Remember, RSVPs are very important. Next, Metro Plan Orlando board meetings, June 12th. Now we've come to the time or our second public comment period. If any members of the public wish to comment or joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function. You'll be recognized or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. After you're recognized, state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 2 minutes. Anybody on line or on the phone?
There are no hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do we have anyone joining us? Actually, do we have any members of the public attending in person who wish to make a public comment?
No comments received, Mr. Chairman.
Wonderful. Well, at this time, if there's no further business, our meeting is adjourned.
And if you have your yellow forms, if you want to add any community groups and bring them to our attention, you can either leave that at your place or write on it and take a picture of it and send it to me. Happy to have that info. Thank you.
Yes.
Mary, you know I could split out like 7 times, right?
Right.
I just need to take it
Just your
home with.
top.
I just-
It has a